So I think we have started off this day in a most interesting and great way and started on some creative discussions for the continuous part of this day. And I'm very happy to introduce the next panel to you, which will be led by Louise Sanz, General Director for an International Association of Science Parks and Areas of Innovation, to take the discussion further with the representatives from the big corporates about how we can address the global challenges. Please give him a big hand.
Thank you. Good, thank you again. So, no philosophical nonsense anymore. Let's go now to hard business. So I would like to invite the panelists that I have on my list. Actually, I'm going to destroy their names. Elisabeth Åbom, Chief Technology Officer, Saab Aeronautics. Please take the floor. Welcome. Hans Holmström, CEO, Siemens Industrial Turbomachinery. Thank you. Welcome. Eva Kvist, Östgren, Strategic Partner Manager, ABB. Thank you. And then Kristina Cato, Sustainability. Probably this. Sustainability. Oh, now I'm off. Now I'm in. Now. Sustainability Accelerator Targeting Agenda 2030, Cybercom.
I think it's me.
Please take a seat if there are seats enough. There is one here next to me. Please.
And then it starts to... No, it worked out.
No, I don't think it really matters.
Okay, good.
Very good. So we have important actors, very relevant to what we do. And I would like to ask you to go first. We may follow the let's say, geographical order that Locke has predisposed, so you can start if you want. I would ask to summarize your main thoughts, if possible, in 5-6 minutes, and then we have time to have questions from the floor or engage in a debate. Please, can you briefly introduce yourself? I'd rather have you doing it than myself extemporarily reading a CV, just very briefly, who you are, what you do, and your message.
Thanks. Working with strategic partnership at ABB, have been in the company for nearly 30 years, and also have a deep interest for ecosystems. So that's the reason I'm chairman of Västerås Science Park, and also the ABB hub Synnerleap for startups that were working very closely to ABB. So what I'm really burning for, that's Swinglish, I guess, but really feel strongly for is to collaborate between our big, sometimes a bit slow companies, that industry companies, and the quick startups with the great ideas, and to open up and do that in a very easy way. And also, I think that's the reason. If we have that happen, then we could build a sustainable society, because we need companies all over our country in Sweden and the other countries as well. We can't just trust the big megacities that everything should happen there. So we need to be active in a lot of different parts of the society, and all towns need to be carefully take care of their own innovation, so they could build and have a city in for the long run. So, I mean, I think I stopped there for the time being. So really cooperation between small and small, small and large, and be brave when you do that. Open up and be brave.
Thank you. You already introduced something that triggers my curiosity when you said not everything must happen in mega cities. So the question would be open. Is there a future for smaller cities in this apparent trend of hyper-concentration of services and decision-making processes in big cities? Very good. Okay, I invite you to take the floor now. Same drill. If you can briefly introduce yourself and then deliver your message.
Thank you very much. So my name is Lisa Åbom, and I work as the CTO at Saab Aeronautics. Saab is a company in the defense industry, and Saab Aeronautics is making fighter jets. So I'd like to start just by saying that our vision is to say that it's a human right to feel safe, and building a little bit around that. I think that is the purpose why our company is around. Traditionally and historically, and I think, Darja, in your presentation, you saw some examples of how military research has really brought forward a lot of innovations that is of help for the civilian society. GPS, digital cameras, the internet, many examples of where innovation has come from the military research moving into the civilian service. And this is something that is can be accounted for. There is something called a spillover effect, where we saw that, for example, the Gripen program throughout the years since the 80s and forward has brought a value to the civilian society, according to some researchers, up to 2.6 times the acquisition value or the contract cost for Gripen. So 2 times 6 times that value comes into civilian use in this dual use kind of word. Now, the time that we're in right now, I think is a time of change, because we've had the heritage of actually driving innovation a lot, but right now I think society around us is much more innovative than perhaps we are in the military industry. So it's a time for us to actually look outside our own world, look at what's happening in startups, at universities, at science parks like Mjärdevi Science Parks and other places, get the inspiration from there and actually bring it towards us. So I think this is a change in the military industry that hasn't been there before. We have to open up, we have to look at the innovation that is outside, we have to bring it into our company and learn from that. And many of the things that I think was pointed out also by Darja in her introduction, the whole notion of security is coming to a bit of a difference right now. The cybersecurity, keeping borders safe, keeping the infrastructure safe, critical infrastructures like power plants, things like that. So the notion of what security is actually coming to a change right now, and we all have to help, and we all have to open up a lot more than we have in the past. So I think that's where I stop.
All right, thank you very much for that. So we continue these initial messages. Next, please.
Thank you. My name is Hans Holmström, and I represent Siemens, which probably you know as a manufacturer of refrigerators and dishwashers, but we don't do that. They have only borrowed our brand. What we actually do is that we work with 4 other major challenges that I would say mankind has. One is mobility, so we sell trains and subway systems and stuff like that. We have a big and very successful healthcare sector. We have a wind power sector, and we have another power generation sector. So these are challenges that I think we're all fighting with on a daily basis. I'm the managing director of the unit that is located in Finspång in Östergötland. Even if you are from Linköping, I'm not so sure that you've even visited Finspång. It's a little bit out of the way. But I think I would like to answer your question that you already asked. Can innovation happen in other places than megacities? And I think Finspång is actually an example of that. So there's 3,200 people coming to work there every day. They represent 75 different nationalities. The reason that there are so many different nationalities represented is that when you compete on a global market, it's not enough to recruit people from the region or from the country, or not even from this part of the world. You have to find people who are really engaged and smart and good, because we need to have the strongest team. So we talk about tech with a purpose. It's not that much of a challenge for us to find the purpose, because what we actually do is we build small and medium-sized power plants. This means that people who have not access to electricity can get access to electricity. The initial discussions and presentations here this morning is addressing very much the climate change. And we have for decades worked with hydrogen combustion, biogas combustion, and we're leading that field in the world, which is great, because now since Greta Thunberg started to preach the gospel and put pressure on all of us, customers from unexpected parts of the world are really starting to ask the question, how much hydrogen can I burn? We have sold one power plant to Brazil, where they will burn 60% hydrogen. We have successfully tested in our labs 100%, so we will launch that quite quickly. I happen to be a big fan and believer of the hydrogen economy as being one piece of the jigsaw puzzle to solve the energy challenges that we have in front of us. I think I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Good. All right, thank you very much. And then?
Yes, hello, I'm Kristina Cato from Cybercom, which is a consultancy within digitalization. I've been there for 20 years, and that's quite long in a young industry like IT and digitalization is. And to start with, we had tech as important for tech itself. And as a consultancy, it was just enough to talk about our clients and help them with what they wanted us to help them with. And that is very abstract. What's the purpose for us? So already 2010, we started with sustainability reporting. And that's, I think, a good way of looking at the company besides the financial perspective. But when you do sustainability reporting, it's very much about doing less bad and looking at supply chain and the production line. And as a consultancy, we don't have that. So we had to look into, or not much of it at least, so we had to look into much deeper what the effect of our solutions that we brought to our clients actually had. And when you think about it, very often you don't know the effect. We just are thrilled about IoT, for example. And then we start to build in IoT in everything at the industry. And then what to do with it and what to do with the data that we collect. So then we realized we had to actually from start think of what purpose will this solution have? What effects do we want to measure? And then the Agenda 2030 came along, and then we have the framework. So to combine digitalization, which is a very strong transformation in society that today we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, which is huge. And if we don't think about sustainability at the same time as we drive digitalization and transformation, we will get lost. Exactly what Daria also pointed out in the beginning. So when we introduce tech to our clients, we want to actually try to have the sustainable departments or the chief of sustainability discussing with the line of business together to make the transition that digitalization can bring. And that's not so easy because I think, I don't know about in your companies, but very often there are silos also within the companies. So we not cross-use the collective intelligence that we have inside, because business is used to do the business things, business development, and sustainability ambassadors or environmental chiefs of environmental quality are thinking more about supply chain and production and not so much about the business. So that's our purpose now, to really try to accelerate the business to think about the sustainability in the transformation.
Very good. So, thank you very much for this introduction to the four of you. I would say big players. To put things in perspective, we probably will be doing well if we remember that worldwide-wise, the 90% or even a bit more than that in terms of percentage of companies located in science parks are small and medium-sized businesses, rather more small than medium-sized, and of course startups. The reason is quite clear. The bigger players really don't need the type of services that most science parks offer to their tenants. They can manage many of those things for themselves. And yet, there are a number of multinationals that have chosen to be also located in science parks. Having said that, I would first like to ask whether somebody in the floor feels like you have questions for any of these panelists to start with, keeping in mind that we are talking of technological development and tech with a purpose. Any volunteer? Any questions? Not yet, it will come. I do have one to start with. And I don't have any particular target, so anyone that feels like answering, please raise your hand. Could you elaborate a bit more on how do you manage your collaboration? Specifically, you mentioned collaboration between different businesses and actors with smaller players. How big companies like yours collaborate, if they do, as I assume you do, with small businesses, startups, etc. Do you see them as something more than just providers of whatever it is that they can supply you? Is there any ongoing thing there that we should know about, please?
Yeah,
Yes.
I can start. I mean, we at ABB we have a specific, you can say, a science park of our own called Syneleap, placed in our corporate technology lab in Västerås, which is the biggest lab for ABB, and there we have today, I think, 35 small companies with technologies that are or could be or not useful for ABB. And the idea is to have a motorway into ABB and to help them to find the right place inside our company, not only in Sweden, but globally in ABB. And that's because we think things are so speedy and we need to be even faster. And even if we try to be fast in our own innovation inside ABB, we need to be even faster than that. And to work together with those often scale-ups, sometimes startups, and to have a collaboration between us really helps us. And it also helps these companies to begin to do business with bigger companies, because that's a science of its own, to not be eaten up by big corporations. And for us, it's really important to be open, to give things away sometimes, not just use those small companies, but to help them to grow, and help them to be stable companies, because that's the best way that we can grow together. And today we have existed a little bit more than, let's say, 2.5 years now. And we have had over 50 collaborations between startups and ABBs. Mm-hmm. And they are really commercial collaborations. Some of them in business, some of them more in development, and really, really useful. And I would say that's a really good way to going forward. And some of these companies are both members of Syneleap and Västerås Science Parks and other initiatives as well. And when I push my colleagues there, I say, okay, 50 is good, but at least 1 0 is missing. So we need to speed up this process even more, because I think that's the way we could build our company forward, and these companies as well. And we also see that our big companies that are situated in Västerås, like Bombardier, for example, are also interested to join us in doing it this way. So, yeah, that's the way of doing it. Yeah. I don't think we have done everything right. We can do things much better, but we are learning, and we have found a track that we think are quite successful.
I know for a fact that, because I talk to many colleagues throughout the world, and perhaps even in a non-conscientious way, or an inadvertent way, but many parks have added this new layer of responsibility, and they are now actively concerned not only with ensuring collaboration and contact between their resident companies and the academia and university, but also between their smaller companies and bigger companies located in the park or not, or located in the area. So sort of asking and encouraging bigger players to engage in deeper collaboration with smaller players, even in sometimes act in a way as a business mentor from which they can benefit, is another thing that is increasingly happening. Is there any more comment on how do you deal with your smaller companies around you in terms of collaboration? Anything we could learn from you, Hans?
Yes. I mean, in Siemens, we have more of a scale-up approach to smaller companies. It's called Next 47. And what we do there is that we just go in with capital and competence into companies that are trying to scale up but might have some challenges in doing that. In addition to that, I think, and this is a little bit unfair, because once, as you said, you become a company with global reach, you immediately, get a lot of things for free. There's a lot of companies and people and persons who are actually contacting us. They know that we're doing what we're doing somewhere in the world, and they're willing to move around to get deeper into their field of interest. So when I get the question, do you have a hard time recruiting the right competence and the resource? I have to say no. There's, in a fairly small world, like power generation is, people tend to know where to go. So there's a lot of people coming to us, at least sufficiently so that we get input from all over the world. I mean, we're doing collaborations now with, for instance, University of Bologna on a zero emission test center in Finspång. Isn't that a nice combination, Bologna and Finspång? We're dealing with a lot of people in Norway, because in Norway there's a tremendous pressure and push for a carbon-free power generation. Even the Norwegian oil company Equinor wants to become carbon-free. We can talk about that in the break afterwards, but that's an interesting approach. So re-injecting the carbon into the wells and just selling the hydrogen as the energy source. So things like that are, easier when you are a big company with a big brand. And I just wish that we as a big company can help medium-sized companies and small companies to get access to that network, because that is invaluable. To have a global reach is exactly what you dream of if you were a small or a medium-sized company.
All right. But Hans, since you have the microphone, you mentioned before the unit you're running is somewhere a little bit out of the way, which sounds to me a little bit of a euphemism as well. And on the other hand, you're telling we don't have actual problems in getting talent. On the other hand, there are many social scientists that have been theorizing that the new creative class, the new knowledge worker, which knows his capacity for bargaining because they know their talent, which is highly demanded, say, wait a second, I'm not ready to go anywhere simply because there is a job for me. I am demanding, I know where I want to go. I like cities. I like cities because they offer me an additional value than just a good job and a good salary. They offer me cultural possibilities, and you name it. So what is the secret? Why are younger, talented people going to you in the middle of nowhere?
Because not everybody likes cities. Some people like green, beautiful forests and blue lakes and clear skies and clean air and snow in the winter. It can really be beautiful. I happen to be from the northern part of Sweden, so I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And we are actually a little bit careful when we recruit, especially young people. Because sometimes you are willing to sacrifice, as it were, 1 or 2 years in the boondocks, in the sticks, to get something on your CV. And if we get someone who stays only for 1 year, that's more or less a waste. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to understand, is this a person who wants to stay a little bit longer than that, who actually likes this way of life? And we've become pretty good in judging if this is going to be a stayer or just a CV hunter, actually. So I think we're not making too many mistakes.
Okay, good. Please, yes.
Yeah, I know the situation from what we in ABB do in Ludvika, which also is a wonderful place, if you like, the same things that you meet in Finspång. But I think it's also important that to build a society around you, because a lot of people that start working in ABB or as you Hans in Finspång, they are maybe married, maybe they are two. They need some other work for the other person, and they need something more than work to do on their spare time. So to be active and help the society to have something else to do in your spare time is really important. To be engaged as a big company in the area where you are is really important.
But
Yes. Yeah.
But isn't it also important for you to show the purpose of your products and solutions? For us at Cybercom, we have As consultancy, we are in between assignments sometimes, and we have innovation zones where we can explore actually new technology together with startups, not only startups with several people, but with one person that wants to try out some new technology for a better purpose, for example. And then our employees could join to make that happen. And that's some would see it as a cost because we don't earn money from it, but we see more that this is something that is driving our competence development, because we need, it's so easy, even though you're big, you are stuck in your thinking and your system, and you need the inspiration from the outside. Yeah. So it's definitely important, I think, to cooperate.
Yeah. Well,
I would like to build on that a bit, and actually taking a hit on both of the two topics we've been talking about. Representing a big company like Saab, and also a very traditional kind of company, I think it's in our responsibility to actually adjust to the changes that happens around us. I think working with small startups, for example, very easy, as you pointed out, it's very easy for us to strangle the startups with the processes that we're running, with the very long time frames before we actually place an order. So I think it lies in our responsibility to make sure that we actually manage to work with those kind of companies. Be a little bit quicker, be a little bit more fast in placing orders, allowing them to survive for the time it takes us to understand what's really happening. And the same, I think, goes for the young people that would want to come to join us and work with us. We have a tendency to expect people to work maybe 10 years before they get a really challenging assignment. And that doesn't fly today. I mean, the young people that comes out today, they want to have something, as you say, inspiring or with a purpose. And we have to make sure that we manage the young people in the sense that they actually understand that what they're doing has a purpose. They will get new challenges. We have to adjust ourselves. So I would like to just say that as a big company, you really have to learn to adjust to the changes that happen around you. I think that's the key.
Good. Allow me one question out of my own curiosity, but it somehow has to do with the purpose of technology. Elisabeth, you are in the military industry. Does your communication department have a hard job to justify yourselves vis-a-vis your society, or how is that going?
I would say both yes and no. I think what is happening in the world around us right now is a little bit worrying in that sense. It's a little bit more stressful. Just our nearby neighbors are being a little bit more maybe aggressive than they have been in the past. It's not such a nice place, perhaps, in the world as it has been. And also looking into the cybersecurity, we speak a lot about all the positive things with Internet of Things and having everything connected, but also that makes the society so much more vulnerable. So in that sense, I think our communication department can easily justify what we're doing in the sense that we're making the society. Our purpose is to make it a safer place. Of course, the last thing that the consequence of what we do is actually going into quite a hostile situation. And that, I think, for some of the young people, maybe that is not the purpose that they are looking for. So I think we have to be very transparent in our communication in that sense as well, that of course we are protecting borders, we are protecting people, but the means of doing that is not nice sometimes, and that is something you have to be open about.
You stopped building cars, right? You don't build
long
cars
time
anymore.
ago,
That's my big
1990.
complaint about Saab, because I was very happy with my 2 Saabs, and now I cannot buy them
I
anymore.
think
That's very bad.
You would be very happy with our Gripen. It's a very nice product. It's much faster.
Another interesting anecdote I had related to Saab, because I'm a pilot myself, so somehow I like aviation and planes and things. So when the people in Mjärdevi offered me the chance of visiting the Saab factory, I was very excited. Somehow I knew what I could be expecting, but you go there with super jets, highest technology ever. The first thing I saw there, actually there was just a big room, there was only one guy with a hammer in his hand. And he was hitting the fuselage of a plane, so that's so far away from the highest technology you can imagine. He was just hammering the bloody plane, so okay, well, not everything is lost. That was good. Are there already any curiosity? Jean-François, Jean-François, go ahead. Ask your question.
Yeah, I wanted maybe for Siemens and Saab. We have seen on the map that there are many clusters here in Sweden. And we know that there are a lot of science parks and areas of innovation. I'd like to know from you, from your point of view, how you see the complementarity, how these two kind of animals are complementary in providing you services you are looking for. For instance, in the way you collaborate with smaller companies or with the academic sector, how do you see in the kind of appreciation of the ecosystem, of the Swedish ecosystem, how do you see the way these two different kind of animals, clusters, science park, cooperating with each other and bringing you the best service?
Saab and Siemens in this part of Sweden, it's an interesting example actually, because to some extent it's the same technology. Saab is working with jet engines and Siemens is working with gas turbines, and they are similar in some ways. Also the production is somewhat similar and the challenges. So there's quite a lot of people that have been moving between Saab and Siemens in this part of Sweden. So from that perspective, it's always good to be in an area, a geographical area, where people can move around a little bit, because they always learn and they bring some new knowledge when they go to another company. There's a little bit of a similar cluster on the west coast in Trollhättan, also with an aero area, I would say. And it's amazing to see how important it is that a few or even many actors can feed each other with good competence and so on. I really think it's important. Now, we don't compete, but even if we were competitors, I think it's good to be in a cluster because it fosters competence development. Also, competition between companies in attracting the best talent. So that's always good, I think.
My question was, thank you for the answer, but my question was more on the collaboration and the complementarity, or the complementariness between clusters and science parks.
Wrong answer. We have a lot of interaction, of course, with the science parks, especially the Järvi and Lead and so on and so forth. Probably because we're active in a lot of disciplines, so digitalization, very advanced manufacturing, including metal 3D printing, and many different functions. So we are a breeding ground for a lot of students and a lot of startups. And I think we could be better in helping startups to get reach in the marketplace. So I have a little bit bad conscience from that perspective. When it comes to interaction with these startups or even people, in some cases, it's quite active, very active actually. So for us, it's super important.
And I think maybe building on what you said, Hans, on the cluster side, I think one of the important part is, as you said, building a critical mass, having people with similar kind of interests that we can work together towards both attracting people to come to our region and to our brand of business as well, but also to work as an influencing agency in a sense, because we can also have shared kind of ideas about what we want to do or where we want to reach. So I think the cluster serves a purpose for the bigger companies perhaps to collaborate and find ways of shared interests, while for the science parks I think the interest would be to actually find the startups, find the newer, faster moving things in the world. So I think they're absolutely complementary to each other.
I mean, we've had some great exercises together with Lena and the team here. We had some co-creation boost workshop. That was great, you know, crazy ideas being presented in both directions, and they will materialize, a few of them. Lena is sometimes acting as a dragon in when our employees have ideas. We have what we call transformation days, and they can stand up on the stage and present really funny, crazy, and great ideas. So we try to have that sort of interaction as well. We come here with our management team. We try to do it at least once per year to get updated on what's new, what's cooking, what's happening here. You know, a lot of startup people are doing their pitches, and we're acting as dragons from the industry. And I think that sort of thing. It's not very prestigious. It's not very super well organized all the time, but it doesn't have to be. It's actually better that it's a bit relaxed, because then the creativity will get out much more than if it's too.
I would like to ask you a question about the financing part and the relevance to the purpose. We saw in Cato's presentation, in one of the slides, where she pointed out that the iPod and then the iPhone had the different inputs. And it was interesting to see that several of the inputs had been financed by DARPA or the US Army. And I think you probably, as big companies, have also had some financing from the different military area for your work. So I was just wondering if you could give us some input on whether the financing part, and when it comes from military sources, whether they have an impact on the purpose of that tech, or whether it is very open to other uses of that technology being financed by the military area.
I mean, our industry is a perfect example, because the reason we're making gas turbines in Östergötland is that the Swedish Air Force needed a jet fighter after the Second World War, but we're not allowed to buy jet engines from General Electric and Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney and so on. So the Air Force asked, can you guys, you're making steam turbines, can you not develop a gas turbine or a jet engine? Because we need one. And they did. It took about 6 years. The project manager was Kurt Nicolin, who became later a pretty famous industrialist. And exactly when the testing was done and we're going to start flying, it actually did fly, then Rolls-Royce and Pratt & Whitney realized, gee, we have created a competitor instead of preventing Sweden from getting a jet engine. So they said, of course, we were just kidding 5 years ago. Of course, you can buy our jet engines, and by the way, the price is half. So our fantastic jet engine became a grounded aeroderivative, as it's called, for power generation instead of flying. So, but we bought Rolls-Royce 4 years ago, so that was their energy sector, not their flying sector.
But I think when we get funded, because of course we are to a very large degree funded from contracts that we get. When our customers want to have a new fighter jet, we get a contract. And of course that is in a sense state funding of what we do. They have a very, very specific desire what they want. They have a specification. They want to have a fighter jet. They don't want so much more than that. I think one of the strengths throughout the industry is that having the state as a customer is a really very good customer in a sense. They're very challenging, they're very tough. They want us to keep strict time and cost budgets, which has helped Saab immensely throughout the years. But on the other hand, as I said in the introduction, researchers point out that what actually is created when the state puts a contract like that on an industry, the spillover effect, according to Swedish researchers, 2.6 times that value, which has an effect in the civilian society. So a lot of the things that are being developed in our industry will actually spill over and generate so much more value outside. Others would state even higher than that. So I think that's we get a contract that says you are supposed to do this. But the technology that is actually developed in that contract can be used for so many other purposes.
Good. Sten-Gunnar Johansson wanted to ask a question.
I don't know about you, Kristina, but you other guys have rather big patent portfolios, and you are very keen on protecting your IPR. And here you meet a startup without any IPR at all. How will you handle the situation, and when will the IPR
Who wants to go?
I can start because
all right.
we worked pretty much with the agreement package. And from many perspectives, one of the perspectives was to be speedy enough, because you can spend weeks, months, and years with agreement negotiations about nearly nothing. So we needed to push that down to a limited scope, and now it takes us, I think it's 24 hours or something like that, to come up with an agreement with a new company. So it's really been speeded up a bit. And it's also very much, we can't protect everything like we have done in the past, because then we will never come to any results. So we need to open up a bit, be more generous, and use a package that is taking both parties of interest. And so that has been quite successful and absolutely necessary to be interesting to work with for the really good scale-ups. They can't work with dinosaurs. So that's it.
Any further comments?
Yeah, I mean, patenting depends on people respecting, intellectual property rights. And for us, not every competitor is doing that, to be honest. So it's a risk, of course, to file a patent, because then it becomes common knowledge. And again, we're fighting with competitors that might not care about patenting laws and IPR topics. So, I agree with Eva. We have to be quick rather than protective, because it's not where you are from an IP point of view. It's the speed that you move. Because if you have a competitor who is behind you from an IP point of view, but moves faster, then it's only a question of time until that company will overtake you. So it's speed rather than position, which is important.
Good. I will overcome the temptation of asking who are these disloyal competitors, or where they are. Because we need to keep things at a certain level. Please, Darja, yeah.
I also really want to get back to some of the things that you've said, Elisabeth and Eva, when it comes to working with small companies. So you both mentioned not being dinosaurs, being open, etc., and you also mentioned being patient, help them survive until you know if it works. So for me, that boils down into actually being a good first customer, because we know when it comes to small companies, sometimes when they work with big ones, they have death by pilot problems.
Yeah.
Could you just elaborate on what other experience you have made and what is really crucial to be that good first customer?
Yeah, it's, let me think. I mean, it's openness is one of the things that's really important, and talk to the people that are involved from the ABB side about generosity, because it's not always in our DNA that we should work like this. Some of us could understand it and have the experience, but we need to talk about it and build the culture which helps us to work with those scale-ups and startups. I think I stopped, because it's about the contracts, it's about the way we're working, and give them looking for opportunities and see them from the angle that we don't know everything. Sometimes a big company, you think you have the roadmaps and you have all the plans and you know exactly what you need and so on. But many times these smaller companies have ideas that we haven't even thought of. And then you need to admit that and understand that there are people and small companies out there who have ideas that are really crucial for you, for our future. and that sometimes turn upside down on how we are looking upon the world. So it's very much of a culture, I will say, how we are working together.
Good.
And I think that we are not so experienced in my company working with startups, and it's a learning journey for us. But I think we in the past perhaps made quite a few mistakes and are making mistakes all the time. And one of the things perhaps is that we're not really understanding what solution has that company come with for us. Where will we put that solution? So one thing is that we're very much aligned about what there are the needs we have, or you use the terms mission innovation, for example, that we actually have a purpose. What are we looking for, and how will this perhaps then startup solve that problem that we have? So a very, very clear reason for why we want something. And then I think what we've done also in the past, which is not so good perhaps, is that we take so long time to be the first customer, to place an order, or to actually make them survive. So I think we're way too slow in actually being a good first customer. And so those two things, actually having a purpose for why we're asking for help, and being much more speedy. I think those two mistakes we're doing constantly, and we have to change that.
Okay, well, we're coming to an end, but we still have time for perhaps a couple of comments about something I'm interested to know your views upon. Let's go European now. How about Europe? How are we doing? I mean, this famous threatening tongue in which Europe is now between the States on the one hand, Asia and China mainly on the other hand. Are we well endowed to face the challenges of the future from an economic and technological point of view, an innovation point of view? Is the famous European paradox still there, present as a ghost and as a threat that we should still overcome? What are your views? Who cares to give us an opinion on that? Are you confident from a European point of view, or are things too shaky for your comfort?
From my point of view, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. In the US, there is an innovation climate which is hard to beat because of the entrepreneurship and the fast money that you can get access to. And that goes for North America, but mainly the US, I will say. This is my personal observation. And the hard place is China, basically, let's face it, with extremely strong governmental policies. And if they want to do something, they will do it. And the oxen is slow, but earth is patient, as they say. It means if it takes another 1 or 2 years, it doesn't matter. They will just muddle along and make things happen. I'm not quite sure what we are in Europe. We are somewhere in between, I guess. And I think if we look at competing between regions, and of course companies don't do that. Companies compete with other companies, and they're global. But if we talk about competition between regions, like these 3 regions, I think we must realize that we are not 20 former superpowers. We are like states in a jigsaw puzzle, and we have to cooperate much more between the different European countries than we are already doing today. We have to let the guards down. We have to realize where competition is coming from in certain areas. And of course, this is very different depending on which industrial area that you talk about. But we are still a little bit believing that we are the masters of the world in every aspect, and we're not. Let's just, realize that. So I think we have to change a few things. For instance, we have to view Europe as a region, as a union, and we have to realize where competition is really coming from.
Yeah, but I think also there is a good framework in the SDGs, the Agenda 2030, where there doesn't need to be any regions. It rather needs to be strong businesses that is driving this change. And I mean, you work globally, I mean, on the markets in Europe and the US and perhaps also in Asia. And we do assignments in all the different countries. And I think sometimes states are a little behind in the development, and we don't know even where the tech will end up. It's simply a catalyst. We need to make sure that we drive the tech development in the right directions. And I don't think that the states or the EU will perhaps make that decision in time. It's really much up to us as corporations to drive this development in the right direction. And then it doesn't really matter if it's in Europe level or in the US or in Asia. I think that's also an old silo thinking. I mean, tech is global and programming is universal. You don't need to speak Swedish or Spanish, or you could actually program and find the community in that. So I think it's important that businesses know that we have the power to use the technology that is right now, the fourth industrial revolution that we talk about, and to use and always think of the framework as the 17 SDGs are, I mean, a great framework. And then you just also put on the layer that will this solution work for 11 billion people, which will be on this earth within this century or next. That's how we should look upon it, I think.
Good, thank you. So my conclusion, I think that as I was listening to the different commentaries, 3 verses of the American poet Robert Frost came to my mind, which I think sum up our job as professionals of science and technology parks in all this, is many promises to keep, miles to go before we sleep, miles to go before we sleep. Let's go for it. Let's give a big hand to our panelists for their generous contributions and putting their knowledge at our disposal. Thank you for that. Thank you very much.